Hello, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar, Social Shopping, BOPIS, AR, and more, Discovering the New Era of Commerce. I'm your host, Brendan Murray. I am the Content Marketing Manager here at Akeneo, and with that, we will get into our speakers today and meet my two esteemed panelists. We'll start with the man on the left, that is Chris Desi. He is the Vice President of Sales for America and Australia at ProductsUp. Chris, how you doing?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
Can't complain. Doing pretty well. It's a nice day here in Boston after a long stretch of cold, so I'll take that.
Good stuff.
And I am also joined by my colleague, Mike Bender. He is the Vice President for Sales for North America here at Akeneo. Mike, how you doing?
Hey guys, doing well. I'm happy that I decided to maybe wear the same shirt today that I have in this bio. It's all good.
We promise that Mike has more than one button-up shirt.
Maybe not.
So with that, we will get into our webinar here. We'll start out with a little bit of introduction. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Akeneo, we offer product information management solutions, or PIM. These are solutions designed to help your enterprise more effectively manage product data. So what it does is it helps you import your product information from your long list of possible sources, and then it walks you through the process of collecting, standardizing, enriching, contextualizing, and distributing your data to various different channels. So that's a little bit about Akeneo, and with that, I'll throw it over to Chris to tell us more about ProductsUp.
Sure. I guess I could say the zeitgeist, to use a German word, we are headquartered in Berlin, of ProductsUp, is that we believe in tearing down data silos, right? So we're unleashing the potential of our client partners that make their businesses and individuals that interact on our platform thrive. Next slide, please, Brendan. Sorry to do two slides there for the opening, but we've got about 150 employees globally, offices in 8 different countries. We've been around for 10 years. The founders founded the company being e-commerce sellers themselves, selling ink cartridges for printers when they realized that the opportunity to optimize data feeds was paramount in order to be successful, and they turned it into a pure B2B SaaS play. I personally have been with the company for about 1.5 years and have been in tech for about 22 years.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris, very much for joining us, and thanks to ProductsUp for providing him today. And with that, we're going to get into our discussion topics themselves. If you guys have any questions as you're listening along, feel free to leave them in the little dialog box there, and we will try to get to them near the end of our webinar. So we're going to start it off with a poll question, try to get some audience involvement and some participation. So we want to know from you guys, this is really talking about you as consumers, taking off your business hat for a second, and that's, have you made a purchase on any of these channels? So it's mobile apps, social media channels, marketplaces, or maybe you haven't used any of them. I imagine that that's probably a minority, but we'll leave the possibility there. And that kind of segues into our first discussion question for our panel here. And as we mentioned at the top of the webinar, we're really here to talk about the new era of commerce. And really one of the biggest elements of this is that it's increasingly going digital. And that's probably not a surprise to most people listening here, as we mentioned a second ago. But what might be a surprise is really just the amount of channels that are kind of constantly evolving and emerging, and how many different ones consumers are using. So Chris, maybe we can start with you here and talk a little bit about the channels you see rising and falling, and maybe a little bit about how companies can make sure their product experience is right for these channels.
Sure. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? Let's see if I could do my, like, one of these jobbers. That's TikTok being one of the most popular channels that's going on out there. So the reality is that when people talk about different channels, TikTok is front and center. They started with 11 million active users in 2018, about 700 million in 2020 globally. But the key here from a ProductsUp perspective isn't just learning about what's next, like what's the new channel that's going to be cool and hip and where everybody's going to be. It's about as the consumer moves through the funnel and they're discovering and researching products, they are multi-channel. So as new channels emerge, it's about the business owner, the people that are on this webinar, understanding that they need to be agile and that they need to be able to provide information to that new user, so that it's not just like marketing 101 back in the late 90s when I'm working on my master's degree. It was initiator, influencer, a decider, a buyer, a user. It's ensuring that you're in all of those channels and you're in front of the consumer at every point. So it might not just be be prepared to be on TikTok, but it's about being prepared to have the content so it's contextualized for TikTok, or the content so it's contextualized for Facebook or for Instagram. So instead of having just one ad for Instagram or one ad for Facebook, you then get deeper optics and learning into what's happening on those channels, and dealing with that kind of change, and completely requires a combination of being a sophisticated marketer and leveraging sophisticated tools. So understanding that it's not just Instagram, it's catering that ad to a definitive vertical, and or a definitive deep dive in a demographic that may be appropriate for your business. And the only way to do that isn't to worry about the downstream stuff, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or any sort of marketplace that you can potentially conceive where you want to sell it or affiliate or whatever, but it's fixing the problem further upstream. And that's where ProductSup comes in. It's making sure that that data is optimized, making sure that you can be nimble and you can be agile with all of that content. So the further downstream stuff doesn't matter. It could be something that somebody is making in their basement. Maybe it's, Mike's son, while he's doing his drum lessons, is also creating an app in the basement, and that's going to be the next channel, right?
I think that's a really interesting point, and one of the things you touched on there that we talk about a lot here at Akeneo, I know I talk about it a lot when I'm writing our various pieces of content, is contextualization. So Mike, can you talk a little bit about kind of what that means in practice in terms of making sure your product information or your product experience is presented in context and is contextualized?
Yeah, we're seeing it more and more. I mean, I think to echo what Chris said, like how important we're seeing omnichannel being, and that we're seeing so many of our customers, even our new opportunities. These are companies that are all of a sudden realizing that some of the traditional ways they've done business, like direct sales, why we work with a lot of B2B, right? So people that like their direct sales team, some of their storefronts where people would come in, like that line of business has completely dried up, and we're seeing these companies having to pivot so quickly to be like, oh my God, we need e-commerce ASAP. We need to do something different. And so we're actually seeing a lot of companies investing in some of what I think all of us would consider to be super traditional, like, hey, what do you mean you don't have an e-commerce site yet, or you haven't figured out your product data? Like, we're seeing people just trying to figure out direct to consumer e-commerce at this time on their own first party properties, as the priority to figure out. And then, like Chris said, then once they figured out some of that basic stuff, now we're seeing them start going into some of the marketplaces and expanding their channels. And what these companies are finding, though, is that the product data that works on their website, or the product data that works in some of their catalogs, like that, the descriptions, the attributes that they need, like those are different than the attributes and contextualization that they need other places. Like, so a great example, right? So we have a current opportunity with a B2B manufacturer. They make a whole bunch of sensors and thermometers and things like that. It's super exciting. So because I went to their site, they started retargeting me. So good for them, right? At least they're thinking about digital marketing. I'm scrolling through my Instagram and I have, like these, beautiful mountains and all these fall scenes. And then I see a stark white image with a thermometer on it. Right? And I was just like, oh man, like they just haven't quite figured out the contextualization. And sure enough, like I'm in the space, I go and look at the description, and it's just, this concatenated brand name plus model name plus a 2-line description. And they've completely missed the opportunity to contextualize their experience for what I expect to see on Instagram, for example. And Instagram is just one of the things you have to contextualize for, like what they put on Amazon, what they put on eBay, what they put in front of their distributors, right? So some of their wholesale distributors, like it has to be different everywhere you go. And that's it seems like this huge amount of work to be able to do, but what we find with a combination of like an Akeneo and ProductSup, right? We allow you to get your data, create the standard, and once you have the basics in with all of the most important attributes, like then it becomes actually pretty easy to be like, all right, I'm just going to tweak that or tweak this, right? Or I'm going to use a little automation to change what I have to fit in some of these places. So it's great to start participating in these omni-channel, venues, but you need to do it the right way, or else all of a sudden you're that stark white image on Instagram and people are shaking their, right? So you don't want that.
That's a good image, and it's something that is growing. I saw in our poll there that about 30% or so about a third of our respondents said that they had bought on social media themselves. And so, kind of going off that, I'm curious as we move into our second poll question, kind of changing it up. So, taking off your consumer hat maybe and putting back on your buyer hat or your B2B hat. Um, what do you expect in terms of your own company's plans for social media sales before the end of the year? Do you plan on starting social media before the end of this year? Maybe you've already started it in the past few months, or maybe not in the next year, but you have plans in the future, or maybe it's not at all on your radar. So take a quick second and think about where you are with that, and let us know so we can kind of factor that into our responses. And as we do that, we'll move on to our second discussion question for the panel here. And this kind of gets at something that Mike was talking about a second ago. So maybe we'll throw it over to Chris to start. But Chris, as we're seeing these new channels rise with, in particular, social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram earlier this year and TikTok, like you mentioned more recently, what do you think are the biggest keys to success on these channels? How can merchants set themselves up for success and make sure these efforts and their initiatives they're taking on are set up the right way and aren't kind of doomed from the start?
Yeah, doomed from the start. So terrifying. Really, it's working with a partner that understands the ecosystems as well, right? Allowing for Productsup to be able to be the ones that understand that the Facebook catalog, for example, in 2017, maybe had 10 parameters for the content in that catalog if you were moving forward for Facebook marketing. But then in the catalog in 2020 has 3x that, and it's certainly not slowing down. These social ecosystems are becoming, and we know this, they're becoming the internet for people, and they're becoming their lives for people. So as they continue to engage on these platforms, specifically in social media, the manner with which you're marketing on the platforms becomes much more sophisticated. Now, the fun part about social media, and I hope the results of the poll show that everybody's at least started Facebook marketing. Let's see, we've already started selling. Oh, that's good, 31%. Yeah, there you go. So they have started. Now, the key there too is when you're engaging in those marketing channels, it's leveraging your data that is slow and robust and good. The data that's residing with the Akeneos of the world, right? That PIM, that DAM, that ERP, and then combining that with your marketing data, but then allowing for the full circle to happen, meaning the order management, right? Because as we all know, you're sitting there, you're scrolling through Instagram, and all of a sudden you see this compelling product that you never knew you wanted, and you're like, that's the most amazing thing, I want it right now. And the platforms understand this, so they're allowing for that order management, order to happen on the social platform. And it's the ability for companies to be able to take that order, update the back end of the inventory, and then remarket outside of the other end. So while we understand that your data is slow and that's good, you need to be able to access your complex catalog and be able to push content within these ecosystems and update that content as inventory changes, as you want to indicate flash sales, as you want to potentially target niche audiences to A/B split test. And that happens when you're leveraging tech like Akeneo and/or Productsup.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And Mike, I know you talked a lot before about not becoming that stark white image. So maybe that's your big tip here. But do you think there's anything else maybe to keep in mind or remember as kind of a best practice?
100%. I mean, the next thing is being nimble. The other really powerful thing about these platforms is really the analytics they'll give you back on how people are interacting with your ads or interacting with the content that you're putting there. I will give that company credit, because when I scrolled down a couple of days later, they actually had that thermometer. It was still a little odd, but at least they had that thermometer on like a landscape, right? It wasn't stark white. So I'd like to think that someone there is like, oh man, that tanked, right? Like there's no engagement, the response is bad. I spent a lot of money, and my conversion rates, my cost per clicks are super high, right? So I need to make changes. And again, it's you need to as much as you can automate that data getting back to you so that you can quickly digest it and make quick changes, like being nimble is super important. but then being able to act on those changes, right? And so if all of a sudden you get data back saying, I need to adjust my campaign, or hey, this lookalike audience is really great for me, I should try to make customized content for it. Like, how do you act on it? Like, what tools, what systems do you have in place to be able to say, oh, I need to quickly update an image, I need to quickly change this description, I need to, and then get it back out there, right? So having software like Akeneo, like productsup, allows you to be truly, truly successful there.
Interesting. And we've been talking a lot about kind of this shift towards digital, especially in the past few months with the pandemic and people kind of being trapped inside. And there's really no denying that, but there are a lot of businesses, particularly businesses that already have big investments and big footprints in their in-store offerings that aren't really ready to give up on the brick and mortar store. And so one of the things they've been doing to try to encourage people to come to those brick and mortar stores and try to keep those alive is what we call BOPIS, or buy online, pick up in store offerings. I'm sure a lot of people are experienced with this. And as we get into this question, I'm curious what people's thoughts are on whether they think that's kind of an endeavor that will get people back to the stores. I know it's something that I use pretty frequently. If I do have to go to a store, I'd rather just kind of run in and out. But we can get some opinions here as we segue into our discussion question, which, as you might guess, has to do with BOPIS. And Mike, we've started with Chris the past couple of times, so we'll kick it over to you to start here. How can companies efficiently add these services? Because, kind of similar to the way we mentioned the social media, it can be a little tricky to get these off the ground and set them up for success properly. So how can companies efficiently add these services to their product experiences? And how should they handle issues like multi-channel returns, where now maybe you've bought it online and you're trying to return it in store, or you've picked it up in the store and you want to ship it back? There's a lot of ways this can get messy. So how can companies handle that?
Yeah, it's this buy online stuff that's gotten me into stores again, or at least into their parking lots. The curbside delivery, where I don't have to talk to anybody, is the way that I like to shop. So it's been great for me. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but what I think that companies need to think about when they offer this, and we've seen this with one of our current customers, a big sort of wholesale warehouse type retailer, did not have a buy online pickup in store offering prior to COVID hitting, and they needed to do, they were challenged to be like, all right, in 30 days, we want this off the ground. And they recognized that the product data they had, it wasn't sufficient to actually enable consumers to effectively buy online pick up store. Like, there were things like weight and dimensions, like, will this thing even fit in my car, right? Like, they didn't have that as attributes in their product data. And the other thing they didn't have is this particular company, they do some drop shipping online, so sort of they almost act as a bit of a marketplace, and then they have specific inventory that's available both online and in stores. Like, they hadn't flagged that, right? So they actually, based on online as a consumer, it was impossible for them to actually connect what products they had inventory inside their stores, and that became another attribute that they needed to start adding to their product data in order to make this effective. So I think the first thing that companies have to do is like, do you have the product data in place that allows you to actually do this effectively? Because the last thing I want to do is show up and realize that the thing that I bought doesn't fit in my trunk, right? Because now I can't as a customer, and I am never shopping there again, right? Because now you force me to get in the car. So these are things that we saw that our customer was able to quickly, like, all right, great. In order to start adding this, here's the category that I want to start with, right? Here's the new attributes that I want to make sure are available on 100% of this category's products. They're able to go inside Akeneo, see what's missing, go in, fill in that information, and then they were able to launch within their 30-day window, at least a segment of their products. That second step of the question was like, how do I manage returns? At least my answer is, don't have them, right? It's like, if you have really clear product data, right, that truly explains to the customer what it is they're getting, what it fits on, the size, the weight, like everything that customer needs in order to make intelligent decisions, you will drastically reduce the returns to begin with. So like a big ROI metric that we look at with some of our customers is return rate, right? Like, most customers, over 60% of customers return products because they didn't match what they thought they were getting. Right? So that's on the company, that's on your attributes, it's on your product data. So again, it goes back, maybe it's the same answer. Like, you need to make sure that you've been super diligent at that foundational element, getting your product data right, before you start adding some of these additional items, additional ways to shop and additional things to do for your company.
Gotcha, Chris. What else do you have to add? What are your thoughts when it comes to BOPIS and making sure that it's set up for success and is, I'll go back to what I said before, not doomed to fail. I'll try to make it nice and spooky for post-Halloween.
Yeah, post-Halloween or election day, right?
Yeah, that works.
Post-election. So even thinking further upstream, right? Ensuring that the ads are happening because you're not getting blocked from a different channel. So for example, if it sounds so ridiculous, but we've had conversations with enterprise level prospects that are getting blocked on Google Shopping because there's content written in all caps, right? So there is complex product data, and then there are just mistakes that happen because the product description isn't written properly. Now, there's one brand out there that can write their brand in all caps, and that's IKEA. And we know this because they're a partner of ours, and that's it. Nobody else should have their brand in all caps, otherwise you're going to get blocked on Google Shopping. So it's allowing for the understanding that when you have multiple teams that are touching that product data in order to put it in through, like the way we refer for products up in our platform, it's almost like a water filter, right? So dirty water in, products up optimizes on behalf of the different channels that you're leveraging. Allow us to do that for you, and then clean water out. If that clean water comes out, then at least you can be nimble, right? At least you can maybe deal with those few returns, like Mike said, but still be able to be nimble in the back end process for it, and allow for the ability to ensure that high level of governance that we all want for our brands. You don't want to dilute your brand equity on any other marketplace, on any social ecosystem, or if you're doing buy online, buy online, pick up in store, because look, we all know this. I mean, like, you can look around at your environment. I'm sitting at a desk that I bought online that I picked up in the store. I'm sitting in an office with books that I bought on Amazon that came to my front door. The world has definitively changed. This isn't just creating and optimizing for data that's online. This is just selling your products, period, full stop.
That's a good way to put it. And I think there's something that this ties into, and maybe not necessarily super obviously, but in terms of trying to improve or replicate some in-store experiences in these weirder times as things are going digital, is augmented reality and virtual reality, AR and VR. And we have a poll question up here now about whether our watchers have used these technologies. And sometimes when you say that, people can give you a strange look and say, no, I haven't put on a virtual reality helmet to buy a couch. But it doesn't have to be that complex and that futuristic. It's something as simple as, you see a lot of furnishing companies or homeware companies offer you the ability to upload a picture, and then you can see what that couch will look like in your living room or what the table will look like in your kitchen. So go ahead and let us know if you have used one of these while we kind of set up our next poll question for Mike and Chris here. And Mike, we'll throw it back again to you to start. And can you talk a little bit about how merchants can offer these technologies and ensure they're still providing a high level product experience? Obviously you don't want it to become just a gimmick or something like that. You want these solutions, these AR and VR offerings, to really be providing value to customers. So can you talk a little bit about how that can be done and how product information plays a role in that?
Yeah, so we see, I think these experiences, especially when we are more tied to our computers, I think the AR experiences are great. I kind of stupidly lost a pair of sunglasses, right, when I was before it got too cold, but during quarantine, I had a slight prescription in them, but I was able to go online. I didn't want to go into an eye store and go deal with that in the middle of this. But one of our customers, I try to shop with our customers. So one of our customers, Essel, or one of the websites, a really great AR where I can sort of take my picture and start trying on virtual glasses. Ended up being great. Like, it was a great experience for me. I was able to find a pair of glasses that fit my face well, and the wife is happy. So it's absolutely. But what I think merchants need to think about is the consistency, right? If I'm going to start offering this, like, I need to make sure that I'm offering this across a wide variety and all my products. Like, there were brands on this website that didn't offer virtual reality, right? Or the merchant was able to get onto it, and I didn't consider those, right? I was like, oh, I only want to try ones that are going to fit on my face, right? So, and that consistency, I think, is really important, because as a shopper, I don't want to have the perception that the merchant's not giving me all they have, right? That they're a little lazy. They're only doing it some places and not other. So I having that internal governance in place to say, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to make sure that for the categories or the types of products that I'm providing AR, I do it across the board. And I intelligently make sure that I'm associating these some of these AR or the 360s or the some of the new things that are happening on there appropriately with the right products. And then I also want to think about the delivery model, right? So now if I have this content, like they can be super heavy, right? And you don't want to start providing this, and all of a sudden you've started your page loads to start being 10 seconds because this thing is trying to load in the background, or it's not compatible with all of the ways that people are shopping. Like I think you need to be cautious about how you roll it out and make sure that you're testing and doing a good job here. So again, making sure that consistency and then doing it in a way where you're not really interrupting the shopper's experience. But when done well, they're amazing. Certainly I think there's things to keep in mind. And I'm guessing Chris will talk about, well, great, now that you have this great content, like where else can I get it, right? Where else does it go, right? I don't want it just to be trapped on my website.
Yeah. It's good segue, right? Oh, look at that, 50-50 consumer.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is pretty wild. I think I would venture to guess that many of the people that answered the poll may not realize
Right, that was why I tried to give a little example. I think Mike's is good too, because we think of VR as like, I'm gonna strap on a helmet.
Yeah, you got the thing and you're like feeling around. And,
right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Mike and I have like beat the drum that one size fits all content is a thing of the past, and it's about the customized experience, whether that be AR, VR, whether that be images, whether that be even the text that's showing up. So it's from static images to engaging creative. It's why we have a video designer, so that in video ads, you can have information within the video ad or within an image that is fed to the image or the video via an optimized data feed on the back end. And that's where it becomes highly contextualized. That's where it becomes highly compelling. And that's where the engagement rates go through the roof, and that's where the conversion starts to happen. So it's not just a video or image for video's sake or for image's sake, but it's contextualized, as we keep saying. That seems to be the word of the webinar. But then there's that conversion event that happens because what's been contextualized is compelling, and there's a compelling call to action that happens within the video. So.
Gotcha. Very nice. And that will bring us, last but not least, to our fifth and final poll question for our audience here. Thank you guys for voting along with us so far. Our last one is kind of reflecting on the four things we've talked about so far in social media and other sales channels, and buy online and pick up in store, and in AR and VR, and what you think will have the big impact in terms of holiday shopping. And I guess it's no surprise then that is where our final question for our panel will get tied in as well. I guess we mentioned Halloween not too long ago, and we'll mention the other side of the season with Christmas and the holiday season now. So as all these new channels and technologies, play different roles in how consumers shop for gifts and other purchases during the holiday season, what do you two expect to see, and how can companies make sure they're ready for shoppers and make sure they're really providing a well-rounded and compelling product experience? Chris, I'll start with you and see what your thoughts are on the holidays.
I mean, the holidays is just amplifying everything else that we've experienced. I think everybody that's listening to this can probably jump on board the bandwagon that e-commerce has gone through like the warp speed wormhole, as if we were in Star Trek, and leapt years and years ahead of time. So if you don't have a team in place that's responsible for what we've just discussed, I don't want to give anybody more anxiety that they might be experiencing, but I'd like to give you a little bit of anxiety. If you are a mature marketing team, if you have a large, robust product catalog, and there is data that many people within your organization are touching, and you know that you need to be selling those products in different channels and different marketplaces and different affiliate networks and different retargeting, you need to have the correct tools in place so that you can optimize everything that you're doing, so that when you meet the consumer where they are shopping, because we all know this, we're all trapped in our homes and we're shopping on these wonderful little shopping devices, right? And we're making these buying decisions that become completely frictionless from us interacting and socializing with our personal ecosystem of friends and family. And the more frictionless that you can be within that ecosystem, especially in the holiday time period, those are going to be the ones that win. Now, I will tell you, the people that aren't prepared for this, that delta that we've seen in the past, that might have been minute, where there might have been an old staid brand that was dipping their toe into digital marketing, that was testing out different marketplaces. Those days are over. It's no more time for testing. It's no more time for trying to figure it out. This is definitively the cultural shift. And the delta, unfortunately, I believe what we're going to see after the holiday season is that delta is going to be so huge that the companies and the individual brands and the retailers, et cetera, that are left behind within the digital ecosystem are going to be so far left behind that they're not going to know what hit them. Whiplash. That's what I predict for the holiday season.
Gotcha. Mike, what about your side? What do you see coming down the pike as we get closer to the holidays and into the new year?
Yeah, so in terms of what merchants need to do to prepare, so one of our partners, Adobe, just came out with their forecast for the holiday season, and they're expecting a 33% increase in sales. Like, that's a giant jump from where we were last year, I think. So it gets, as a merchant operating in this world, you need a playbook for the holidays. Everything from load test your site for extra traffic. The last thing you want to have happen is something break. Load test all your back-end systems, right? You need to have seamless connectivity from your ERP, from an inventory pricing standpoint, through your PIM, and to make sure that you have all of the product data up to date. You need to be nimble. You're getting new products in, you're sending them out. You need to make sure that there is seamless connectivity between, from all the way from where your product starts on the ERP, all the way through your website, and then all the way through these other channels. Test that connectivity, test it under load. Make sure that your team has a playbook in place in case something inevitably goes wrong with your images or your product data from your DAM. Like, you need to make sure that you have quick fixes to all of these issues. And then also understand, though, that the holidays don't end on the 25th, right? Or the 20th, like that. All of these sales that you've just made, you need to make sure that you have the teams in place for customer support. You need to make sure that those teams are empowered and they have access to the product data and things that you've just sold, so they can quickly help your customers and come to quick resolutions. So it's you still have time, but like it's November, right? In the next week or two, like, you need to make sure, like, you have maybe a little bit of time, but make sure you have playbooks in your test place that you can ensure a really smooth holiday season.
Gotcha. Great. Thanks a lot. Well, I know we are a little bit over time here, so I'll try to wrap it up quick. I did see one question come through that I thought was kind of interesting. I know it's something we talked about earlier, as the question poser mentioned, that we kind of mentioned it in the first couple of slides, but hadn't talked about it too much. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on tips or best practices for Amazon and other marketplaces. I'm sure a large part of it will be contextualize, as we seem to keep saying on this, but are there any other tips or best practices you two could share with us real quick before we get going? Mike, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think so what a lot of our merchants recognize, that if Amazon is a major sales channel for you, you need to treat it independently, right? You need to make sure that the copy that you're writing, I guess it's contextualized, you're right, Brendan, but like the copy you're writing, the images that you're using, the attributes you're using, make you competitive on Amazon and make you competitive within Amazon search, right? Like, it's different than Google. It's different than all of the other marketplaces, and you need to treat it as something unique and special. Dedicate staff to it specifically so that you can be successful there. It requires quick iterations on your getting analytics back from Amazon, right? Quick iterations on what you're sending, quick iterations on your price points, and having a really quick connection between you and Amazon, I think, is important. Making sure you're taking advantage of some of their special content, the below the fold and some of the store things that they're able to give to you. Just take a performance-based analytical approach to your content on Amazon so that you can be successful.
Gotcha. Chris, any parting tips on marketplaces before we go?
I mean, absolutely the same thing. Amazon is like the Amazon. It is complicated. It can be confusing. It is very easy to get lost if you're walking around by yourself. So have a guide so that you can be collaborative as a team, so that you can be agile as a marketer, so that you can be contextualized, right? So that you can be experimental, so that you could iterate on a couple of different things that might have worked and that you can be nimble in that regard. But making sure that it's all definitively transactable, so you're actually selling on Amazon and you're not just figuring these things out as you go, and making sure that the team continues to be informed on how to interact within the different ecosystems. Amazon is going to take, as Mike said, time and attention and focus.
Got it. Well, with that, I think we will wrap it up here. Thanks very much both to Mike and Chris for joining me today. If you guys want to learn any more about what we talked about, you can find us at akeneo.com or productsup.com. And with that, I think that'll about do it. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
It was fun.
Thank you.